Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary with Karl and Laura Forehand.
Often when we have doubts about religion or simply want to ask questions, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert.
We would like to invite you to join our sanctuary, the Desert Sanctuary.
We've tried to pick guests that would resonate with and challenge us and our fellow seekers here in the desert.
We believe that a key to the journey is to keep asking good questions, and we believe that all stories are sacred.
Our hope is that you will find life and healing for your body and mind, and that you will be able to be where you are and be who you are.
And now, here is our show. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary podcast. I'm Laura Forehand, and I'm here with Karl Forehand. And, well, it's the very first day of my Christmas/winter/holiday break, whatever the most woke expression is, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, from school.
Had a weekend of trying to do Christmas, and it didn't totally work out.
You know, when you have small kids in your family, you just can't predict when the flu bug or just some sort of virus is going to creep in. So the good thing is really, if you think about the true meaning of Christmas, you can probably celebrate it any time of the year. You don't have to do it on a specific date,
or if you just consider it the winter solstice, then there's not as much pressure and anxiety.
Right.
So we just get together when we can. And we've usually done that on New Year's Eve, since it's your birthday.
Which we're going to do this year with one of our children and some of our grandchildren, but not everybody, but that's okay. It's just the way it is because they all have their own lives, and that's what I keep telling myself anyway. To keep me from being incredibly disappointed. But no, I get it. I really do.
We have to eat a lot of leftovers.
That's all right.
Yeah.
We made, so we decided, because we made Thanksgiving dinner, one of our granddaughters said she liked turkey. The other one said she liked ham. So we made a turkey breast and we made a spiral cut ham, and turns out they didn't. Well, the one that said she liked turkey really liked dark meat, but we got white meat. And then the one who said she liked spiral ham, turns out she didn't like the particular spiral ham that I got. So anyway, so they didn't eat any of it. So we decided for Christmas dinner that we would do Tex-Mex. And so and I always think of like leftover enchiladas, like leftover lasagna. It's always better leftover. It kind of sets up, and I don't know, to me it tastes better than the first time.
So we got enchiladas and fajitas and tamales and chips. We got all kinds of
stuff
and dessert and all that kind of stuff. The neighbor brought us some cookies in exchange for some chili.
Right. Oh yeah, we
also have chili left over. So we got plenty to eat.
Yeah,
during
we're good.
The winter solstice.
Yeah, like you'd think we're going to be like, if we were going to be snowbound, this would be fantastic. But it's going to be like almost 60 degrees on Christmas Day. This whole week's going to be beautiful as far as temperature outside. So
we're doing a podcast.
Yeah, so here you go. First day of my break, and I said, well, I got some time. Let's go ahead and do a podcast. So, and it's about something that I've kind of wanted to talk about. It's been kind of mulling around in my head. I don't know. I was listening to I listened to several podcasts on cults and cult survivors and survivor stories and things like that. And so I was listening to one driving somewhere, and I don't know, like it just hit me because they were talking about prayer. And my initial thought was, why is this is not the title of our podcast because I thought it was a little too rough, but I'm like, why do we serve such a weak ass God? Right.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like he's so weak.
I remember that sentiment, from Leona Stuckey when we interviewed her, and she was raised a Mennonite, and they were so faithful to their denomination that her dad went to jail because he didn't want to be nonviolent. It was part of his religion.
Right.
So they were very committed to their God, but then over the years, as things happened to her and God didn't step in, or even Christians didn't do the right thing, even when she stood up before the church and said I was a bad girl because I got pregnant, even though it was, forced on her,
Right. It was a
and
sexual assault.
yeah, and all those kind of things, and they couldn't deal with the guy because of their religion, and
Mm-hmm.
yet God didn't step in. You could say, well, she's okay now. She's successful, but it was very hard. And
Right.
it took years and years and years and lots of
Mm-hmm.
turmoil and torment and sexual assault and battery and
Yeah.
uh, harassment and
Mm-hmm.
all those kind of things. And God didn't intervene in any of that.
Mm.
Um,
Despite her begging.
yeah, and that's probably where my deconstruction began with the bikers against
Mm-hmm.
trafficking people that came, and the girl that testified that stood up and talked about it asked me before it even started, why did God let that happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
I begged him not to, her dad was trafficking her,
Mm-hmm.
and people try to go down the path of well, it's redeemable, right? It's going to be for God's glory, but people that have experienced sexual assault say that doesn't work with me.
Well, and it goes back to, well, why does my trauma somehow glorify God? Like, that's sick.
Mhm.
That's just a sick and twisted way to think that my trauma, my abuse is for God's good.
And I
Like
was
that doesn't even make sense when it's like coming out of my mouth right now.
right.
Like it's so twisted. And I feel like even when we were in church that because I remember that. I mean that's like a
Mhm.
core memory. I remember that. And in my head I'm going, yeah. And then people would say things like, well, God was right there with you when it was happening. I'm like, are you serious? And
Yeah,
he did
did nothing.
nothing?
Yeah.
Like if I saw my child being sexually assaulted and I was standing right there, I would be in jail right now. I would honestly like grab a knife and stab that person to death.
I remember someone that we knew pretty well in the church settings, in the Baptist settings, that had this whole testimony thing about being assaulted, and they put a bag over her head because she was so ugly, and assaulted her. And she had this whole story of how God had redeemed her. But you could almost see in her face how troubling it was to her, and it evoked emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and women got emotional and responded to that and kind of empathized with her. But then, in my opinion, she didn't wasn't totally functional. That there was still all of that there,
Mm-hmm.
but she had to work so hard to create a narrative
Yep.
that explained away,
Mm-hmm.
could God stop it? And if he could, then why didn't he?
But that's the thing is you will ask any like I feel like we just do a lot of backflips, right? As
Yeah,
Christians, it's like you can ask them, well, couldn't God have stopped that? Yes, but we have free will.
right.
I mean,
But where was her free will?
right.
She didn't choose that.
Exactly.
And so either God, and I know some people like to take the avenue of God can't. Well, if God
I
can't,
struggled with that book, by the way.
yeah,
I know, like that was during a time that we were both deconstructing and it spoke to you in that moment, but I was just like, I don't get it. Like, I
it
don't understand. Like, if God
still sounds
can do
like an excuse.
anything,
Yeah.
then how can he can't? How can he not? Anyway,
Yeah.
I feel
Or
like it was just like kind of,
my thought is if he can't, then why do I need him? I
mm,
mean, I have friends, I have family that care about me. I like to think as a father, I wouldn't stand by and allow my daughter to be raped. I would
right,
try to stop it.
exactly.
And if I didn't see it, I would probably go after him. I would be vengeful. Um, but if he can't, you know, then why do I need him?
Mm,
And or her or have you
yeah,
express
right.
God. But if they can't stop those things. And we used to explain that away with love. Well, you got to make the choice. Well, the victim very seldom has a
Mm,
choice. They're not choosing
right.
that. And you you can't there's just the sexual assault people that I know, um, using the narrative, the NRA narrative, that someone's going to break in your house and rape your daughter or your wife, and therefore you need more guns, and that gets all mixed in with it too. But it's just like, what use is a person that won't stop that wouldn't get in the way if they could, right? If I can prevent it from happening. Now, maybe uh, if this God thing works out, then I'm more able to forgive, and maybe I have some built-in support systems that kind of support me through that and hold me when I cry and things like that. But it still doesn't um, solve the problem of, if we're created in his image, we're why do we have the desire to stop it? Why do we want to protect those people around us? And God's, the narrative says he's protective, he's king, he's in control, he's in control of everything, and he can do anything, and he has all the resources.
Yep.
Yet he's still, I think that Leona called him impotent.
Yeah.
It just seems like it doesn't have any power, or we just excuse it away with, the excuses like, well, God, I'm trying to think of what the excuses
Like
are.
his ways are perfect. Are you thinking about?
Yeah, we can't understand his ways. Right. We didn't have enough faith.
Oh.
And that just kind of bleeds into the whole thing of when something good happens, I automatically give credit to God, and anymore that makes me just, my stomach hurts.
Yeah, same.
When I hear that, because it's just like people are inserting words into their sentences to praise God for the thing that happened, or I give all the credit to Him, but I don't blame Him when I fail.
Right.
I don't blame
That's
Him
my
when it
fault.
doesn't happen. That's my fault, and so that's.
And you talked about, because I think in this podcast, what struck me was, the person had been praying, and I'm not even going to use the word praying. They were begging God to make this stop, and God wouldn't. And that's where I feel like I was like silently deconstructing, like just questioning things, but it was never out loud, right? So just over the years that you're a pastor, I would question things like that female biker that was just like, I just don't understand. And then when people would say things like, well, God was there with you when it was happening. And in my head, I was like, that just doesn't sound right. But I would never express it because you were a pastor, and you had an image to uphold. I had an image to uphold, right? I could seem doubtful as a pastor's wife. But what really started me being more vocal and really being pissed off really was, when our daughter was pregnant with our grandson, and we found out that there were some medical complications in utero. And at that point we were still, I want to say we were still in the church, or maybe we had just gotten out. I can't remember, but I just remember, we weren't to the point where we are today. And so I was just like, I had this internal conflict. Like, I know I need to pray about this, but why do I need to pray about this? What if I don't say the right words? What if my prayer's not long enough?
Yeah.
And at the top of that mountain of, what ifs was, why do we have to look at disabilities as something to fix? And that's when I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to, because no matter what, if the outcome isn't what society deems it should be, it's going to be my fault. I didn't do enough.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't live that way anymore. And I don't want to serve a God that is just constantly, telling me I'm not enough, but won't tell me what is enough.
Right. I was thinking about the Catholic faith not too long ago. I have several friends that are Catholics or ex-Catholics or whatever, but to be a saint, we talked about on the unlearning curve about being a saint, you have to have a miracle or two. that you perform. And so then looking back over, the 2,000-year history of the church of, Catholicism, which is the church initiated, um, there there are very few miracles in all that time, and the millions and millions and millions of people that have been Catholics and then Protestants out of that, how very few miraculous things you really see, and a lot of the stuff in our churches sometimes is suspect and staged, and
Sure.
And I'm not against miraculous things happening, but it very rarely. And then what I see is more what you're talking about. I see more Christians begging God and saying, we need more people praying. We need more faith. We need to try harder somehow or give more money. Is what it usually ends up happening is people get grifted because of things like that. We just need more money. And I even get frustrated with politicians right now, but you don't need more money. You just need to do your job. And in some ways, that's what I'm telling God.
Right.
You don't need more money. Number one, you need to communicate better. You wrote a book that nobody can understand.
Well, that's what I was going to say. A lot of Christians are going to be like, well, he did give us instructions. It's in his word. It's in the Bible.
Yeah, it's clear as nothing.
Nothing.
It's not clear at all. And
it's contradictory.
I know that after studying it for 25 years.
I was going to say, I really can't speak to it because I didn't study the Bible, but you studied the Bible every week for 20 years.
Yeah.
On multiple days, not like the Saturday before you had to preach.
Yeah, and then, give a little bit of our history. I was grounded in, I went to a private independent fundamentalist Baptist church and school in junior high and late elementary. And we did Bible drills, and I can still say the books of the Bible, the Old Testament, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Chronicles, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalm, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi.
Dang.
I think I hope I didn't loop back somewhere in there. But
well, that's more than I could do. I can do Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I can do.
But the New Testament, I have to sing the song, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But I was drilled in that stuff early on in life and still remember much of it, and all the stories of the Old Testament. And then during seminary, I started studying parts of it, individual books, and so on. And a lot of times as a pastor, I'd preach through books of the Bible, so go through them, and go back over them the next time and so on. And I was just everywhere in Scripture, not just studying to get the sermon out, but also to see where I stood on past issues. So, it was 25 years or so in church and then before church, but also being drilled on it and having classes in school, in the private school. And
you went to Grace Bible. Was it university?
Yeah, it was Grace University later. It was Grace College of the Bible initially. Okay. So, but I had some real good Bible teachers.
And I'm like, yeah, so you've been immersed in the Bible, and you've studied it from a lot of different perspectives and directions.
And I think, since we started deconstructing, we've had some interaction with progressive type churches and so on. I know a lot of Catholics. I've attended a couple of masses, not very many, but been to a Greek Orthodox church. We've used to go to charismatic churches a little bit when we first met. We've, that was too much for us, but, attended a lot of Baptist church, a lot of Bible church, a lot of those that claim, the Bible's inerrant and we're going to study it hard. And my goal when I went to church was to reform it, to have it different where it meets people's needs better and so on. And of course, that went well at first, but then when people find out they have to change or do something different, they fought against me. And
well, I think it's scary to challenge your own thinking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's true for all of us till we get to a crisis of faith, basically, until we get to a point in our life where you're just like, like with yours, with mine, with our grandson, I can't buy into this whole narrative anymore.
That so in the trauma stuff we've been doing, they teach us about attachment. So a baby attaches to its mother, usually, the primary caregiver, and attaches to them. And as we kind of study that stuff, it becomes very apparent that people need people, right? I need to attach to people. Number one excuse when people say, "Do I need to go to church?" is they say, "I need community." What you really need is not community, but connection, right? So we need attachment and connection. And when we have attachment, our mental well being is better. When we connect with people, it can bring regulation. We can help each other. I'd say a lot of mental health counseling and therapy is about repairing relationships and changing how you view them and things like that. So I'd say I'm absolutely positively sure that we need people. I could live a more aesthetic life, where I was just writing and as long as I had something to do, something to write, and so on. But it would be missing something without people,
Right.
And if I never had that in the beginning, I would probably be more prone to long for it, right?
Yeah.
But the question is, do I need God then? Well, do I need someone that can't communicate with me? Like, even if we go to the narrative of you have a purpose and plan for your life from Jeremiah, there's a vague verse in Jeremiah that says you have a purpose and a plan. But I'll ask you because I've stated it before, what percentage of people in church know their purpose and plan?
I don't think many do. That's why we keep coming to church, because hopefully we'll find out, right?
Yeah.
Or that's why we keep reading our Bible. Hopefully something will magically pop off the pages. And here's what I want to say too about that. I think we go through different seasons of life. And so I remember back in my late 30s, maybe around 40, I was like, I just feel like I'm called to be a teacher. And I went back to school and I got my master's in education. And I really do believe that at that time in my life, that is what I was supposed to do. Now I'm pushing 61 and I'm like, I'm ready for a different season in my life. So your purpose, in my opinion, is going to change with your different seasons of life. I think we go to church or read the Bible to find that one concrete purpose. And, and then feel guilty if that changes. Or, did we ever really, was that ever really our purpose in the first place? I mean, then I think you can get into some mental health issues because you just start thinking, maybe I had it all wrong all this time. And you didn't have it wrong. That was just a different season of your life, I mean, when we were raising kids, that was one season of life. Now we have grandchildren. This is another season of life. And, anyway, so I just don't think there's very many people that truly know what their purpose is, because I think your purpose can be fluid.
Yeah, but the narrative doesn't say you'll find your purpose. It says, I have a purpose for you.
True.
And that's like you're saying, that's why we go to church so much. And that's why we go on retreats and these conferences and so on, that Christians do, is maybe I'll get the answer there. Maybe I'll get away from all my stuff and I'll get the answer then. But the example I use is I always think of my son when I say this, but if I went to JD and said, listen, I have a purpose and a plan for you. You want to hear it? And he would say, yeah. So, well, I'm not going to tell you right now, or you just have
You
to
have to
discuss.
do this list of things
Yeah,
before I can tell you.
be faithful to me, worship me, which also I can't imagine doing with my son. I can't imagine
Mhm.
if he says, I'm really grateful that you provided for me in this way and got me started. And I would say, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now have a good life and go excel.
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't say, well, make sure you come back tomorrow and thank me again and worship me some
Every
more.
day you need to be, yeah,
And
worshiping
by the
me.
way, Dad, what was that purpose that you have for me? Well, you know, and then I drop it or get off the
Mm-hmm.
change the topic or whatever. Just keep doing what you're doing. Get
Mm-hmm.
and that just doesn't after a while he would be like, this is ridiculous. First
Right.
of all, I'm not going to worship you. And second, doesn't seem like what the purpose is that
Mm-hmm.
you have for me.
Mm-hmm.
And is it the same? And then we try to make it, then denominations try to make it the same. Well, you read your Bible, you go to church, you pray. Those are the things that you can't go wrong, right?
Right.
Do more of those, give money to the church, volunteer here, do more work for free. And then, maybe if you suffer some more and whatever, you'll find the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
But I just keep going back to that. God's got to be a better father than I am. And he's got to be more interested. Honestly, I would, you know, for lots of different reasons, we struggle with communication, but the creator of the universe ought to be able to create or communicate with his creation
You're right.
better than
Well,
what we
and
see.
I said before, when we were talking about maybe doing this episode, a creator needs to take care of his creation. We created children,
Hmm.
right? We took care of them. Did we make mistakes? Sure. We owned up to those mistakes. But that's what a creator does, takes care of their creation. And I feel like you just look anywhere around them. And again, I can hear the Christians saying, well, we have free will, and that's why things are so screwed up right now. But I'm like,
Because we made all the
if
bad
you have
decisions.
if you are all powerful, God, then take care of it.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, I'm going to go back to that. You can spin it however you want and say, well, we have free will. Well, we're not robots. Well, true. My kids have free will, but I still took care of my creation. I
Mhm.
still take care of my creation in
Yeah.
the way, I mean, that has changed a little bit because they're adults now with their own children, or our son lives halfway around the world. But when they need me, I'm still there to take care of what I created.
Yeah. And so this is a real extreme example. I may be off topic just a little bit, but was thinking about the illustration today of if you had a child, and just couldn't take care of it anymore, or you didn't, uh, and you went and set that baby out in the wood, put it outside somewhere, it wouldn't last very long.
Right.
It wouldn't, and so would God go get that baby? Would God rescue that baby?
Well, what people are going to say is, well, he'll send
Is send
somebody,
somebody, but that's
but
because
that's different.
there's not a human being in the world that wouldn't
Right.
rescue that
Well, there might
child.
be a few, but
Yeah.
yeah, I hear what you're saying.
One might say I'm too busy or something like that.
But if
It
you
might,
see a stranded baby, you're gonna, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, unless you are just have no heart.
And that's why I say people, not God, because God doesn't rescue things like that,
Unless you beg, and you better make sure you say the right
or you
words.
just massage the narrative and say,
Yeah.
well, like you said, he'll send people. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say there's not an atheist, there's millions and millions of atheists in the United States that would pick the baby up and help
Mm-hmm.
it.
Oh, for sure.
Right. And God's not sending the atheist, I'm assuming.
Well,
And they would
maybe.
say, well, he could, whatever. But
But that's the thing. It's almost like with the whole Trump administration, well, that's not what he meant. Well, we're taking that out of context. And I feel like that's what Christians do with this God narrative that they've created.
yeah, they give him the Trump treatment.
Yeah. It's like, we're going to spin it and spin it and spin it.
we love it that he's so direct, but here's what he didn't mean that. That's not what he meant.
Right.
Right. And so he's transparent, but he's not a very good, and Trump's not a very good communicator either.
Right.
He has a way of influencing people, but he's not very good at communication. He shouts people down, but then doesn't listen to them when they really have something to say to him. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that was my whole thing when I wanted to record this podcast was just, I feel like Christians may feel like they have created a powerful God narrative, a God that is all powerful, all seeing, all knowing. But really, we've created this weak ass God, a God that requires, so much loyalty and worship and begging for things. And then, like you said, when we get it, we're just like, praise Jesus. And then I have to say this really quick because we were watching College Game Day on Friday because we're huge like college football fanatics over here. But it's like, on College Game Day, how they do that field goal kick and they'll donate like $1 million or whatever. And like the guy that was going to kick it was a soccer player and he was really good. Like he got close twice. But I remember before the second kick, they were like, anything you want to say? And he was like, something like, it's all God or something like that. And then he didn't make it. And I'm just like, okay, then how do you reconcile that?
Right.
Obviously,
Obviously,
but that's the narrative. Yeah. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But that's the narrative that we've created this weak ass God that can't do shit without. I mean, you talk about how people need people. Apparently God needs us real bad.
When the Oklahoma softball team was in their finals, I think last year, or
no, I think it was last year
because they would always say the fourth man in the fire. We got the secret, right? We got and they're referring back to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I think, and then
in the fiery furnace.
Fiery furnace with Jesus in there. There's another something in there, and apparently it's Jesus. So
right.
We've got the fourth man in the fire. We got the secret, and this is hard, but that's why we're winning, and they kept repeating that. Then when they lost, I posted something to one, I replied to something somewhere that said, "Where was your fourth man today?"
Right.
And they started, they go into defense mode. Sure. That's not what it's about. And then, like, well, you can't give God all the credit, and then when you don't get the results you want, you've got to give him the blame too. I mean,
right.
He was the one.
He didn't show up for you.
Yeah. Or if he gifted you and you had all this talent, surely it was your fault, I guess, because you didn't use it right or whatever. And so then you just accept all that shame.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't work, so I can't even, really be glad for my accomplishments. Can't say that I've practiced softball every single fucking day from time I was 10 years old.
Maybe before that.
Yeah. I've lived it, breathed it, ate it.
Parents have spent thousands and thousands of dollars for me to be part of a traveling team, give up all their weekends when I was little.
Right.
And maybe even your siblings too, because maybe they weren't in a traveling team. So your whole family has sacrificed.
Yeah, but you can't really fully celebrate that because it's always, I give all credit to God.
Right.
Because, well, it wouldn't be anything without him and so on. Yet there's atheists on their teams. There's, people that don't go to church in their teams that succeed just as well.
Right.
But they can never celebrate. And then when they lose, it's obviously not God's fault. It's their fault. And I think that's bad. You'd say, well, we went out and did a game that we enjoyed playing. We played together. One of us did better. And let's be happy about that. Let's say you guys did better than me today. But when if you just interject God, it just comes across as bullshit.
Yeah.
It really doesn't ring true for anybody except the ones stuck in that narrative, right?
Uh, Question, and I didn't prep you for this, and we have absolutely no research, or maybe you do, I don't, on this, but how much mental health issues are because of all that mental gymnastics that we do,
Yeah, I think
right?
athletes have a lot of mental health
Not
issues.
just, but I mean, I think our world in general, because like you said, there's so much shame when things don't turn out the way we begged God for them to turn out, then we put all of that shame and blame on ourselves.
I think sports are real similar to church, in that, it separates you from society to some
Mm-hmm.
degree. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're performing, right?
Right.
You're a spectacle for someone to come watch,
Mm-hmm.
but athletes are protected, especially the really good ones
Mm-hmm.
are protected. They don't, I knew a guy that did Earl Campbell's homework once
Oh, wow.
and at EDS when I worked there,
Okay.
that had done his homework in college, before he went to the pros. But they're protected, right? It's kind of an insulated world that they
Mm-hmm.
live in, and they perform. They have a lot of pressure on them, but it's kind of church in a way that they separate themselves from the world, and every week they're doing hours and hours and hours of volunteer labor, and doing their thing together and getting their instructions
Mm-hmm.
from the God, aka the preacher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just that I think the church doesn't heal our woundedness because
Right.
there's not time for it.
Right.
Doesn't fit the narrative. And I wrote about that one time, just how church fails to do it. And I think, athletes get a lot of community, from
Mm-hmm.
hanging around the same people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they address their mental health as well as they should. And they're starting to
They're starting
recognize.
to, right?
But
Mm-hmm.
but it's the same way in church. If we're always hoping for a miracle, if it's going to be better
Yeah.
by and by, and if God would just come back, then it'll be better. Then we just avoid life, and we keep putting it off and putting it off until it gets really bad, and then the church doesn't even want to deal with us then, right? And so then, same way on sports teams, you probably don't hear about all the athletes that wash out because of mental illness. Or
Mm-hmm.
the Dallas Cowboys just lost a
Yeah.
player the other day at the
No,
height of
like,
his career.
yeah, like about a month ago or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Young, like 24. I don't even know how old he was, but he was young.
he lost his mother, right? She died. It was just painful and
Yeah.
hard and would be difficult. Um, and I don't want to single him out. I won't say his name or anything, but that's just the thing. Church is
Mm-hmm.
a lot like sports, and that it's a big spectacle. It's a thing. It's a show. And
It's entertainment.
the
Mm-hmm.
actors, the performers, the people on stage, I think very rarely get help,
Yeah.
right? And the top athletes are the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I know they do have some sports psychologists now that, uh, like in the WNBA
Mm-hmm.
and, hopefully in women's softball also, but
But I think that goes back to, if you are a Christian, you are taught from a very indoctrinated from a very young age to mask that, right? To say, I'm just going to give it to God. I'm just going to pray more. I'm just going to read my Bible more. I'm just going to, attend more church services, all the while not dealing with those mental health issues. And they catch up with you. They
yeah.
catch up with you. And that's why a lot of times when people do unalive themselves, it's a shock.
Hmm.
They did not see it coming.
Yeah. Because it has been pushing things down,
Pushing things down, but then
ignoring,
also
bypassing.
just, yeah, bypassing it with, especially if they're Christian. I can't speak for people that maybe don't have um, the Christian faith, but especially Christians, you stuff it down and you just, you cover over it with all this bypassing, these platitudes.
Yeah, and it might even be good to have the narrative of a perfect God, But when the perfect God doesn't show up that way in our lives, it's hard to believe that. And then when you have to, because you're going to lose your community if you admit that, right?
Right.
And we do need some community. We need people, right? Like we said before. But uh, I would just question, when people are at this point, they're like, well, I'm not giving up my beliefs, but I wouldn't ever ask anybody to give up their beliefs or say you don't need church or say you can't go to church. I would say if your beliefs are good, they need to be questioned. And you need to say that. Just like I do if I buy something from somebody and they cheat me or don't give me what they promised, then I'm going to be suspicious the next time. If it happens 2 or 3 times, then I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right.
And so you've got to do that with your beliefs if you consider your beliefs of any value. You have to keep evaluating and questioning them. And it's, something in the stuff I'm writing right now and just realizing we've been deconstructing our whole lives, right? Been doing that. We question things, we grow out of them. We say, oh, I used to believe that, but no.
Right.
I don't think that anymore. If I'm in a small town, haven't ever been anywhere else, then I have a limited, narrow worldview, and I have to keep questioning my understanding of it, right?
Right. Absolutely.
So where would you label God? I didn't write that down, but I didn't know.
Where would I label?
Yeah, like so Leona, when she was talking to us, said impotent. What would your word be, or do you have a description?
He reminds me of my earthly father, absent.
Yeah.
Almost, I don't want to say non-existent because I know my earthly father exists, but I would just say absent. Impotence a really good word, but I don't want to take somebody else's word, but that is a really good word.
Yeah, and I just keep thinking about unable to communicate. He should be able to communicate better. When I think about the Bible, I say it should be better written. It should communicate something to us. And like the other books I read.
Yeah. And the fact that we're sitting here talking about it, like I just had this kind of feeling come over me, just that we're sitting here talking about it and
Oh my God.
Well, wait.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like, so we're sitting here talking about it. We're feeling sadness and almost a longing for something that we wish was. Why isn't God showing up in that?
Yeah.
That kind of just proves my point anyway. It's like, why isn't God going, oh my gosh, my children are hurting and like they really desire to see me and know me and have me be a part of their lives and still again absent.
Yeah, nothing.
Or why isn't he communicating with you right now? Karl, I am here. I am with you always, and let me prove that somehow to you.
I wanted it to be true.
Absolutely.
I think
you're told from a very young age that it is true. And then, don't have any young children around for this next part. I'm just going to say. But it's even like I remember when I first learned that Santa Claus, the actual person, that comes on Christmas Eve down my chimney, that physical person was not real.
Yeah.
And I remember being sad about that. Right? Now, do I believe kind of in the spirit of the man who Santa Claus was? Absolutely. I do. I feel like, those stories that we hear of, I don't even know where it was, but way back and, Saint Nicholas, help the poor children and all that kind of stuff. I believe that. And I believe in that spirit of generosity and giving and things like that. But I do remember. So I don't think it's unreasonable to be sad when you start deconstructing and realize everything you thought was true is now starting to peel away or fall apart.
And so everything you wanted to be true. We wanted it to be
exactly.
True. Yeah.
And that's what I want people to understand. It's not like we're coming in here hot, this is all a crock of shit and blah, blah, blah. Like when I got the news about our grandson, I wanted to believe that, if I just prayed the right prayer and said the right words and made it long enough, whatever God wanted, then everything would be, and I'm using air quotes, fixed.
Yeah.
I no longer believe that. And it was in that time where I was wrestling with that I was just saying to myself, I no longer believe this. If that's what God requires, that's shitty. Yep. He's like a puppet master, and I'm cutting the strings.
Yeah. And for me, my life hasn't gotten worse, it's just as good as it was, right? And I haven't plunged into sin.
Yeah, I do feel like some ways our life is better.
Yeah.
There's not that anxiety of hell anymore.
Don't have to manage all those narratives.
Right. Don't have to try to convince yourself that there's not a million contradictions.
I want to tell you where a lot of that came from me was when I seriously questioned serious Christians. When I seriously asked them hard questions and just how inadequately they answered it. It was almost like when I went back to where I grew up and met some people I knew in junior high, and then now it's like, wow, they didn't change very much from then, and this narrative they have is kind of broken. But that was the same way when I questioned serious Christians. They just didn't really have any answers. It was all excuses and so on. Someone that has studied something and really knows it deeply usually can tell you right off the cuff, this is what I understand. This is why I believe this. This is how I've seen it proven, and so on. But I think, get used to someone teaching them every week and expect that person to answer all those questions. And then when you hear an apologist, a Christian apologist, it still sounds like excuses. It's, it's just like like you mentioned before, trying to protect Trump, and that's what they're trying to do. They're protecting their God, their Trump.
But if God is who God says he is, if he is all powerful, almighty, all knowing, he should not need people to protect him.
Right.
Shouldn't need that.
Right. Exactly. So we'll leave it there for now. We have some other questions stuff.
We'll be back. I got 2 weeks.
Yeah. We got nothing but time now.
Right.
Thanks for listening in, guys. And as always, be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary podcast.
Remember, all who wander in the desert are not lost.
We believe all of our stories are sacred.
We are always here if you need someone to hear your story.
Check out our blog on Pathos and also our YouTube channel.
And stay tuned for our Leaning Forward conference.
Remember, we love you.
And be at peace.